Hello, Miss Tyne here with your last math lesson on surveys. Now today we are going to use the answers from our survey questions to create a graph. We are going to create one graph together, and then you're going to create a graph on your own. And then after we create our graphs, we're going to have some questions to answer about them. So let's get started and have a look at what question we will be graphing together. Now yesterday you had 15 questions to answer, and they were all really good ones. But I wanted to pick one for us to graph that had 4 choices and that a lot of people had a lot of different responses to, so we could kind of spread it out a little bit. So the question we're going to graph today is, what animal do you like best? Your choices were turtle, lion, dodo bird, or cat. Now, when we make our graph, we need to include all of our data. What animals everyone chose. So out of 21 people, we got 6 votes for turtle. This line through our 4 tally marks right here tells us that we have 5 votes here. So 5, 6. We had 2 votes for lion, 4 votes for dodo bird, and we had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 votes for cat. So now that we have that data, we need to put that into our survey. But first, we have some really important information we need to add. I'm sorry, not our survey, our graph. But we have some important information we need to put in our graph first, so we really know what our graph is telling us. So you're going to have something that looks like this to start to fill in your data and your information. And this is going to turn into a bar graph. So we will be making a bar graph with the information from our question. So we need to know how to organize our data first. So first, we need to decide a good title for our bar graph. Now, remember, our survey question was, what animal do you like best? And the title of our graph should be really similar to our survey question. Now, we are going to turn the survey question, what animal do you like best, into our title. Any ideas on how we could do that? Now, one way we could turn that into a title is by saying, second graders' favorite animals. Now, this is a good choice for a title because it tells us who voted, second graders voted, or answered the question, and what they were talking about. What did they vote for, or what did they choose? We could also say animals second graders like. Now, both are good choices because they tell us who's choosing and what we're choosing. So now we need to add our next bit of information into our graph that will tell us what 4 animals students could choose from. So we need to put our choices down at the bottom of our graph right here. One choice for each column. So we need to fill in turtle, lion, dodo bird, and cat for each one. And the last thing that we need to know in our graph before we put any data in is how many students chose each animal. Now we have 10 little boxes on the left side here, and we need to fill in some numbers into those boxes to show how many students voted for what animal. Now we have 10 boxes, and we didn't have any students choose we didn't have any animal that was chosen by more than 10 students. So we can just number from the bottom to the top by ones, and every bar on our graph will just represent 1 student. So let's see what that's going to look like. Here we go. We do need to look at our graph again first. So we know that 9 is the most votes that we had. So we can do that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Each bar representing 1 student. Now we can start to fill in that data. Now, when you do that, you're going to want to have the data right by you. And I have this in your Seesaw activity for your question, so you'll have it right by you the whole time you fill in your graph. So the first thing we need to do is we'll fill in our first choice, which was turtle, and we need to fill in 6 bars to go all the way up to this line here that marks that we have 6 students that chose turtle. Now, when you use the tools in Seesaw, do your best to start all the way at the bottom and go all the way up to the line. You don't want to go over because then we might be confused and think 7 students chose turtle. And you don't want to go under because then we won't really know if it's 5 or 6 students. So be as careful as you can with your drawing with the pen tool to show how many each student chose. Then we want to fill in our lion. Again, we just go right up to that 2 to show 2 people chose lion as their favorite animal or the animal they like best. And then we want to show that 4 students like the dodo bird best. And then we go all the way up to the 9 to show that 9 students like cats best. So now that I've entered all my data into my graph, I can start to answer some questions about my data. It's really important to understand what we're looking at. So let's have a look at the questions we're going to answer. Now you'll have 2 pages in Seesaw. Remember to go to your second page to fill in these answers. Let's have a look at number 1. So number 1 says, what was your survey question? Remember, our survey question was, what animal do you like best? Not our title, our survey question. So we fill that in there. Now let's look at number 2. List your choices in the table below and write a number to show how many people picked each one. Now this says you do not have to use all the columns if you didn't have 4 choices, but we did for this question and you will for your next question. So we need to fill in our choices and how many people chose each one. So let's start with our choices first. We had turtle, lion, dodo bird, and cat. And then you might need to flip back to your graph, your bar graph, to remember how many people chose each animal. So we'll look and we'll see here on our graph that we have 6 that chose turtle, 2 chose lion, 4 chose dodo bird, and 9 students chose cat. You might want to write that down on a piece of paper so you remember when you go back to your questions to fill in each number. 6 for turtle, 2 for lion, 4 for dodo bird, 9 for cat. Okay, let's look at question 3. Use one of these symbols, greater than, equal to, or less than, to compare the number of people who picked choice 1 and the number of people who picked choice 2. So our first choice was turtle, so we write that in here. And our second choice, right by the 2 up here, was lion. So we write that right here, choice 2. Now we need to decide who had more votes. Now remember, when we draw our greater than or less than symbols, our symbol's kind of like that alligator mouth, and that alligator always wants to eat the bigger number because alligators are really hungry and they can eat a lot. So we can see that there are more people that chose turtle because 6 is a bigger number than 2. So we would have our symbol facing or eating turtle, and we would read that as the number of students that chose turtles is greater than the number of students that chose lions. Now let's look at the 4th question. Write an equation to show the difference between the number of people who picked choice 1 and the number of people who picked choice 2. Now, when we say difference, that's a clue that we're going to do subtraction. So we always write the bigger number first in subtraction and then the smaller number. So we could write an equation that looked like this. 6 minus 2 equals 4. 4 is the difference between how many students chose turtle and how many chose lion. Now that you really know what to do with your survey and how to answer your questions, we are going to look at the question we're going to graph in Seesaw. So you're going to graph the question, what food do you like best? Here's how many students chose pizza, how many students chose tacos, burgers, and hot dogs. Remember, this line through our tally marks means 5. You'll count it as its own tally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you fill out your graph, here's what it should look like. You need a title. Food second graders like could be your title. You need all your choices. Your choices are pizza, tacos, burgers, or hot dogs. And you need to show how many students voted for each one. So how much is this line worth? We have 10 students voting for one item or one food as our largest number. So you can just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 would be this top line. All right. And then remember to answer all your questions on page 2. Now, this is just what your Seesaw activity is going to look like. So you are all ready to graph your question. I put the question in Seesaw so you can see it again, and you're ready to answer all 4 questions. All right, get to work.